So my name is Alexander Thomas. I'm a freelance software developer, consultant, working as a team leader, CTO position. So yeah, I've been doing this for I think a bit more than 15 years now. Um, I consider myself to be a full stack developer with a bit more of backend focus over the last few years. A normal website is the same for every visitor. So no matter if someone looks at the homepage or at the category page or teasers, there's no functionality, there's no normal functionality for personalizing the web experience for an individual user. So that means that it's basically up to the user to find their way around and extract the parts that are relevant to them. But there's an overwhelming amount of content and a vast number of competitors, and that means that it's more and more unlikely that users are willing to invest this amount of effort and of time and attention in order to go through this process of extracting the right information, the right bits. So if a website is able to adapt to the user's interests, that lowers this barrier for the user dramatically. So it's much easier for the user to come into a mode, to enter a mode where he or she doesn't feel like it's an investment, but it's more a discovery of relevant information. Such a discovery can have different forms. So it may be an inspiration, like browsing on Pinterest and just finding more and more stuff without even thinking about what you might be interested in, but you just find stuff that is interesting. Or it might be research like on Wikipedia or qz.com, where you have a specific goal, where you're interested in a specific topic and you want to find out more about it. Or it might be in the context of shopping, where you're looking for a specific product. So depending on the context, a recommendation needs to be more fuzzy or less fuzzy, but it's always very good always very interesting for the user, because it makes it easier for him or her to find find what he or she is really interested in. The hard thing is to make it relevant. So the point is that if you want to personalize the web experience, you need a lot of data. You need a lot of information, not only about your own content, but also about the user that you have. And traditional analytics tools are not very good at that. They're very good at telling you which of your pages are popular, but they are somewhat limited to an URL-based and tech-focused view on things. So they can tell you things like which browser did the user use, or which URLs are popular, how much time was spent on site, how many pages did any individual user view or have been viewed in total, or things like that. And what's even worse is that those informations are rarely given in real time. So not only do you have only a very technical view on things, you also only have a view, you have a backwards oriented view. So if you use those tools data for personalizing, you can only do a certain number of things, and you can only personalize on a, I would say, statistical level. You can build lists, for example, lists like our most popular articles. You could also build lists like users that use Firefox are also interested in those articles. But it's never, you can never find out what this individual user is really interested in. So that's what makes personalization so hard. I would say there's a differentiation between personalization and generalization. So you can somehow classify this user and give him something that might fit, but you really have no clue if it fits to this individual person. So traditional analytics tools are not able to tell you who's this user on your site, And what type of user is it? Which of your content is most interesting for him or her? Like what author or which topics, what categories and stuff like that. How engaged is he or she with the content? So is the current content really interesting? Is the product what he or she is really looking for? Does the user like the content? Maybe he even shared it or something. And what could you recommend to her or him in order to keep the user on the site or make him return to your site? So for quite some time, personalization was only able on this general, I would say, content-based level, and that was the only thing that we were able to implement on a web scale level, because personalization on a per user level is quite an expensive thing to do. So you need to be able to identify the specific user at any given time, and that means that you need to be able to say something about the current user if he's not logged in. So the moment when a user enters the site, you already need to be able to say something about him, and that's quite tricky, because normally HTTP, so the protocol the web communication is based upon, is stateless. So every request happens from scratch. So you make a request, the user views the site, and then he makes another request, and basically you don't know if it's the same user or not. But of course you can set cookies, but you need to do more. You need to implement something that I would call a soft login. That's something that you can view on Amazon, for example. Like whenever you've been you logged in at Amazon and you revisit the page after some time, all right, Amazon still kind of knows that it's you, or at least has the ideas. Because if you go into the menu, it says, is this you or not you? So that means that they store some sort of information in order to be able to tailor the site to your needs. And you need a lot of data about your products and the content and about the current user's behavior. So you need to track simply everything, like how far did the user read your article? Did he really read it, or did he only skim through the content? And what's even worse is you need it in real time. And since you need it in real time, and since you want to customize every single bit of your page, you cannot cache everything that easily. And that what makes it so hard. Basically, everybody who's offering something on the internet, if you look at your own behavior as a user, you will find out, and I think you would agree, that we all expect a more and more personalized web experience. And that does not only mean we expect that the site that we visit adapts to our interests or to our needs and expectations. We also expect that the site is able to identify us on various devices and different browsers and different times, whatever. So a publisher is very interested, for example, to decrease bounce rates. That's a thing that happens a lot especially on publishing sites that have mainly social traffic. So people are attracted through amazing headlines on Facebook, for example, and then they come over to the site, read the article, and then they're gone in a second. That's the bounce rate. And they want to decrease the bounce rate and increase loyalty by recommending relevant content. At the same time, they want to be able to understand what type of content and which topics are relevant to their audience in order to plan ahead and give them more of this. And of course, what's also important, especially for publishers, is the ability to monetize the inventory optimally. That means if you're as a publisher are able to recommend relevant content, that means that you are able to also recommend stuff that comes from the archive. So you're not bound to the fact that you have to deliver new content all the time, but you're also able to recommend stuff that might be older but still relevant to the user, because you know what he or she is really interested in. So that's for the publishers. And for the e-commerce vendors, it's about up and cross-selling, of course, and it's about identification and categorization of current users. So is the user coming through a newsletter? is it maybe a loyal user, and or does it make sense to incentivize him by offering a voucher, for example? And you also want to recommend relevant products, maybe products that are a bit more pricey or that are more relevant to the customer than even what he's looking at the moment. You want to know if you can recommend products from that the user put in the basket but never purchased. You want to recommend stuff that is available. You only want to recommend current price products and show the current price. And at the same time, you need to avoid that it gets too detailed, because that makes it quite creepy. Personalization has been around for quite some time now, and I think most of us have gotten kind of used to it. But especially over the last 1 or 2 years, we've moved beyond this recommendation widget thing. This users who like this might also be interested in that thing, because especially in an e-commerce environment, users are expecting a much more tailored experience. And for example, you cannot offer them more of what they already purchased, because that's kind of ridiculous, and I think users are not willing to accept that anymore. In the publishing sector, there are simply too many alternatives, and people are just not staying on the site. They're moving away very quickly. So if you're not able to find something interesting in a very, very short amount of time, they'll just be gone in a second. Like I already said, traffic, if you get traffic via social, for example, BuzzFeed or moviepilot.com, people are attracted through interesting headlines, interesting topics. They come to your site. They want to get this bit of information that's behind the headline in a very short amount of time. And if they don't find it, they'll be gone immediately. But even if they find what they're looking for, those specific users, they're not very loyal, so they would be gone, maybe not immediately, but a second later. So you need to be able to present something to them that's at least as interesting as what drove them to your site. What's really interesting is that we now have tools that combine analytics and recommendation and give the site owners what they're actually interested in. And that's not information, that's context. So you need to understand in what type of situation the current user really is, and give him something that matches this context. And that can be there's a wide variety of possible contexts. So for publishers, tools like Parsley don't only track URLs, so they're not following this traditional approach of tracking from a technical perspective, like, for example, I would say Google Analytics or Piwik are doing, but they really analyze the content itself. So what you do is, as a publisher, you enrich your sites with meta tags and describe the content itself, and Parsley is then able to kind of understand the content itself, and offering recommendations through Parsley is then a much more tailored thing. So it's really, they are able to track things like what is most likely the favorite author for this current user, or which topics might be interesting, which topics are related, for example. And that goes way beyond what the traditional tracking tools were able to extract. In the e-commerce context, there are also tools that combine tracking and recommendation. For example, there's Econda's ARP system. They merge e-commerce tracking and recommendations and a soft login. That's the thing where every visitor gets a tracking the moment when he arrives on the site. So they are then able to offer information about the user's history. So not only from a technical point of view, but also from a contextual point of view, which articles has this specific user put into his basket, which did he purchase, which did he not purchase, which of those articles have been have been put into the basket, but then have been removed later on, and all that kind of stuff. So so then you're then able to, for example, you're able to show widgets which are much more tailored, but at the same time you also have a very mighty API where you can really ask in real time what kind of user do I have here? Because it's still not easy, and I'm not even sure if it ever will be. It's still very expensive if you want to do more than this normal widget kind of thing. Like, for example, Econder is offering you a set of widgets which are nice, and they do quite a lot of things. But if you want to go beyond that, you have to build it yourself. So if you, for example, if you look at sites that focus on or that are using the Parsley recommendation engine, they're really Parsley and the recommendations that come through Parsley are the main feature on that site. So that site minus Parsley is really almost non-functional. So you have something like a vendor login, because there's only a very small number of services that are able to deliver that kind of tailoring, and there's no standard behind it. So you really decide for a service, and you make him a crucial part of your whole infrastructure. I think it's a huge challenge to find the right balance here. On the one hand, users expect a perfectly tailored experience, and they want to have the most relevant recommendations in real time. And on the other hand, they are scared because all of a sudden, if they really have it gets kind of creepy if the recommendation is too good, and tracking so much data about a user also leads to data collection with a very high density, because you simply track everything and you map it to a specific user. So yes, we need to think about that, and it's hard to find the right balance, and not only because the companies are so evil, but also because it's so hard to not track and store everything forever and still meet the requirements the user so the expectations the user has. And what's even more important is that with that amount of scalability in the background, we are not limited anymore by what can be done or what cannot be done. So it's possible to do everything. So it's basically possible to store everything, to identify every user, and to connect every system with every other system. So for example, you can connect not only your web tracking, but you can connect your web tracking to your CRM, and bring all those systems together and have the full picture. And the question is not if it's possible or not. The question is, does it make sense? And is it the right thing to do? So there is a number of potential risks that arise from that fact. Like I already said, recommendations can become creepy when they're too good or too adequate. So nowadays we're in a position where we have to somehow make the recommendations more fuzzy and add a few products that don't match so well, because everything else would be too good. And then there's a number of security implications, because when all informations are available everywhere, it's very tricky, and it's a tough decision to think about who has access to the information, especially if you start connecting third-party services like the newsletter provider or the another tracking service. And if you have an API on your site that allows to get profile informations in detail via JavaScript, and you also have third-party services, for example, ads on your site, then that might be quite a security problem. There's a whole new level of cross-site scripting problems that comes up from here, because, like I said, on the one hand, you can have third-party services who are accessing data. On the other hand, you can have attackers who are trying to extract data from your site. So what we need to do is we need to develop some sort of a transparent framework that allows us to manage which data are available and who has access to those data. And we cannot trust to the fact that some things, we cannot trust or we cannot believe in the fact that some things will not happen because it's too complicated or it's too far-fetched, because basically it's possible to connect everything with everything.